Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. While some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
So let's talk about George and the effects of cultural Marxism on his franchises, his company. I still look at Lucasfilm because it bears his name as being his company. So that's just the way it is. And we had to talk about this. So there's so many facets to Lucas. He's a car nut. He almost died in a car accident as a teenager. He's lucky to be alive. And he actually studied anthropology before he studied film, and he wanted to make experimental film, avant-garde, kooky stuff. And he didn't like the way Hollywood did things, so he went up to San Francisco following Francis Ford Coppola up there to begin American Zoetrope, but we'll talk about that further. What got Lucas interested in the hero's journey is Joseph Campbell's books, The Power of Myth and The Hero with a Thousand Faces. And the fact that back in the early 70s, kids had Clint Eastwood's Man with No Name up there, and then later Kojak, and he thought they needed actual heroes, people that went on a journey, that actually were inspired to do something noble. And he set on an idea to write these stories about this family that was first called Starfighter or Star Killer family. And it was what we got on the screen was very different from his first ideas. There were things that he thought he wanted to do that were not part of the story. Ended up being, because it didn't work. That's what you have to do when you're creative. You can't stick yourself in a box, which makes him the opposite of a cultural Marxist because they're stiff. All they think about is politics. So he went up to San Francisco with Francis Ford Coppola and helped jumpstart American Zoetrope, which was Coppola's film studio. He did not want to be in Hollywood either. Both George and Francis detested the Hollywood system, especially since companies like Gulf and Western, Coca-Cola, etc., had bought the studios from the moguls and did not understand the art and creativity behind making a movie. They didn't understand the vision. These guys can actually see what will be on the screen long before it's ever filmed, long before it gets to the screen. And with George was his partner, Marcia Lucas, his wife. And she actually won the Academy Award for Best Editing for Star Wars, the first movie. She was the one that really kind of helped him shape it and put it together. And for a while, she was his number two. And she's one of the few people that could actually talk him off the cliff about doing stupid things with the story. So let's talk about the first movie. The first movie was definitely an avant-garde film starring, you're not going to believe this, Robert Duvall. It was called THX 1138. And you'll know the number because that number shows up in Star Wars. And it did not do well. People did not understand it. And Francis basically told George, why don't you make a movie people want to see? And George created American Graffiti, which became the one of the biggest hits, if not the biggest hit of the 1973 when it came out. Starring Richard Dreyfuss, Ron Howard, and a bunch of others. And it's great. Harrison Ford was in it. He played the bad guy. And it was a great movie. And people loved it. Of course, the suits at the studios didn't understand it. But then when it played so well to crowds in test screenings, they had to put it out there. And lo and behold, American Graffiti became George's first hit. And it was at this time he really started working on science fiction, fantasy Star Wars. Now, Francis Ford Coppola was like, why don't you just do this? And George was like, fine. And George met Alan Ladd Jr. Alan Ladd Jr. got him the money through Fox to make the movie. And off to Tunisia and England, the crew went to make this movie. And it would become probably, if you look at rates of inflation, if not the biggest selling movie, the second biggest selling movie after Gone with the Wind of all time. It was playing through Christmas of 1977, and it opened in late May of 1977. Movies, they don't do that with movies anymore. They don't let them just sit. They can't. You get one big hit out of the park. Hopefully word of mouth will help carry it along, but they've screwed it up so badly that people don't trust the filmmakers anymore. Again, why did George want to do this? Because he wanted to give kids and adults the hero's journey, right? And he added elements of the Western. He added elements of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. He added elements of Greco-Roman mythology. And he added things about what humanity has always wondered about into this, because he's an anthropologist. So he understands these things. And the inspiration he took from Joseph Campbell was obvious in every little detail. And basically this franchise changed the way movies are made. If Steven Spielberg invented the summer blockbuster, George Lucas was the one that solidified it, but solidified something deeper. Because back in the 70s, we had, and I like Martin Scorsese, he was making very gritty, very cynical movies. And so were a lot of other people. I think Sylvester Stallone's the only one that didn't. And the reason why Rocky was so popular and the reason why Star Wars was so popular is because there was an optimistic, hopeful feel. This was the 1970s. Nixon resigned. Vietnam was a fiasco. We had an oil embargo. Jimmy Carter was a joke. People in Western countries needed something to get their minds off of the problems that have been created by the people they voted for. And Star Wars filled that niche very, very well. And, nobody saw this coming. George didn't see it coming. And yet, he's on a beach walking around Maui talking about Indiana Jones with Steven Spielberg, and here we are. He's got the biggest hit of the summer, if not the biggest hit of all time. And he hit the right note.
What if someone else beside you came to you and said, I want to make episode 7? Could you see that happening?
No.
No, absolutely, positively, you're really closing the door without any wiggle room whatsoever.
Right. There is no episode 7.
They really didn't understand what the word graffiti meant.
They didn't. The studio executives generally are not the most sophisticated people in the world. And you will find that if you go to Hollywood. I hope you don't, because you don't want to be oppressed by people who are not as smart as you are. And I'm dumb. And obviously...
How embarrassing for you. I left you a message not to come. I'm passing on The Godfather.
For 10 long weeks, the Star Wars company labored on the suburban London sound stages, bringing to life a film that had begun as an idea with George Lucas 3 years before.
So here we are on the set of Raiders of the Lost Ark, I'm going to assume, and this was the second idea that George had. He told Steven Spielberg, who's in the picture here with them, him and Harrison Ford, on a beach, walk, as Star Wars opened up to acclaim. And to me, it's just another element of what George wanted to bring the world, which was an appreciation of history and the deeper meanings in people's cultures. And the first movie, of course, Raiders of the Lost Ark, which they go after the Lost Ark of the Covenant, and they end up going on through into the search for the Holy Grail. And they're not only fun movies to watch, they're movies that remind you of something that is missing in the world, which is an appreciation for history and the things that really matter. And George understood that, which is why when he decided to go to ABC and say, I want to make the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, they gave him money and he did it. And these were good shows. He had Rick McCallum helping him with that. Rick McCallum is probably the guy that should have taken over Lucasfilm. I'm always going to say that because he had an appreciation for what George was doing, and he is a good filmmaker all on his own. And we'll talk about that later, but there's a part of me that just is very upset he didn't get his chance. And the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles actually talked about the history of the world at the turn of the 20th century, from 1900 into World War I. And absolutely great stuff. And it was about bringing history alive to kids because they didn't know it. Trust me, there are boomers that don't know their own history. Then George decides to go back and make the prequels. This is where the problem starts going for him as far as the fans go. The fans didn't like the prequels. They were older now, and so they wanted something, I don't know, maybe older, something that they could... It's to me, I don't see what the dissatisfaction was after a while. After going to see TFA, I got the flu really bad, so I went and I got all 6 movies, episodes 1 through 6, and watched them. And I had a new appreciation for the prequels because the stories are good. What you have to start out with is a good story, and they made tons of money, a lot more money than the sequels did, because the stories are good. People went back to them, all right? And they were Star Wars, where if you look at the sequels, they're not. They have nothing to do with the franchise at all, and they undermine everything that came before it purposely. They're trying to rewrite history because that's what critical theorists and Marxists do. They rewrite history to fit their narrative. Look at the 1619 Project, okay, if you want to see history rewritten. So then we go into another thing, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Now, I personally liked this movie. There were some problems with it, but still, it was fun. It meant no harm. And the bad guys were Russians. Finally, we get Russian bad guys. We get commie bad guys. And it's great, right? And the first 20 minutes, they're in the Area 51 warehouse, and the Easter eggs are just great. I mean, Steven Spielberg let himself loose with the warehouse scene. And I thought it was fine, but people again complained a lot. So then George, in 2012, as we know, sells Lucasfilm to Disney. Now, they had great success with the TV show Clone Wars. Clone Wars actually gave the prequels a solid ground to stand on that they didn't have before. And I think a lot of people have come to the realization that the prequels were good because of the Clone Wars. But Disney said, or Bob Iger said, we're not gonna buy it unless you have movies in the hopper. So George, against his own better judgment, said, I've got script treatments for the sequels, as long as I can be part of making them. And, Iger said, fine, right. So Kathleen Kennedy is George's partner in this. She's the co-president. And how, again, this happened, I don't know, because my problem with this is why wasn't Rick McCallum considered? Why? Why was she considered? And don't tell me it's because she had more experience running a studio, because she didn't. This is my problem, how she muscled Rick McCallum out, because I blame her for this. And she is definitely a Marxist. She's definitely a cultural Marxist, because what she allowed to happen, and she's lazy, right? Incompetent, lazy, which is basically the hallmark of a Marxist, right? She muscles McCallum out. Disney keeps her on as president of Lucasfilm, and they make TFA. Half the movie should have been a laugh track. It was so bad. It was poorly written. The director, J.J. Abrams, is a notorious franchise killer. The original characters were not treated well, and I mean not at all, and undermined. Again, here's where you've got history being erased. Because what they're doing is they're trying to erase what came before it. They're trying to undermine it, make it illegitimate, because it's not the fact that they think they're better at making these movies, and I think these people do honestly think they're better at it. They want to ruin the hero's journey. See, the hero's journey is a story about an individual. Cultural Marxism, critical theory, does not consider the individual in any detail at all, right? No, there's nothing about it. Star Wars is about the individual. Luke Skywalker, Anakin Skywalker, Han Solo, Princess Leia, Mace Windu, Boba Fett, individuals. And critical theory, cultural Marxism, is something that is the direct opposite. Everybody believes in the same thing. Everybody does the same thing. And what happened before we brought you your collective utopia doesn't matter. It was all illegitimate. You were all selfish then. But people like this guy right here can have everything, right? Which is that's actual fascism if you think about it. When you get to TLJ, you see something that was so underhanded and mean-spirited. And the reason why is because this guy wanted to, I think, go after George, not only because this guy's a damn Marxist, he's also upset over the prequels and his whole subverting expectations. He also wanted to bully Mark Hamill. And along with an incoherent storyline that included diatribes against capitalism and rich people, just shows that TLJ was not only woke, it was a cultural Marxist morass of garbage. Because Rian Johnson is not creative. He's too stiff to write Star Wars. He doesn't understand it. And of course, you get guys like Pablo Hidalgo who work with Lucasfilm. I don't know what he does beyond. I really don't know what he does because the books are out there with his name on it. Other than that, I really don't know what the guy does. To me, if you want to save money, you get rid of this flotsam right here. And of course, he was one of the people that attacked Gina Carano for daring to have a different point of view. And of course, Hal Hickel, who's one of the animators at Lucasfilm, was cheering loudly on Twitter when Gina got let go. And it's like, you guys really can't handle it when someone disagrees with you, can you? Again, cultural Marxist, individual thought is not welcome. If you think for yourself and are critical of what's going on, what they're doing, and you see something wrong with it, and they will cancel you, and that's exactly what they did to Gina. I mean, this is the problem here with Rian Johnson, Pablo Hidalgo, the Hal Hickels, the Matt Martins, the Phil Sostaks. They are unable to think critically because they weren't trained that way. They weren't educated that way. They are, I mean, red diaper baby for Pablo, yeah. And this is in direct contrast to George and what he envisioned for his franchise. And it's his franchise, it's not theirs. It's not even really Disney's, because Disney's done everything they could not to earn money with it. Star Wars is ultimately about the individual hero's journey. Indiana Jones is exploring history and our mythology and our beliefs and our hopes and our dreams through a very cynical eye, I think, because Indy is cynical, and why not? And the guy was a World War II veteran and World War I veteran, so, but everything that George has done, including Willow, is in direct contrast to what the sequel trilogy is, because the sequel trilogy is, like the 1619 Project, chooses to erase Star Wars under George Lucas. That's exactly what they attempted to do. When you've got Pablo saying they're going to indoctrinate kids to a podcaster, that's all you need, right? This is where critical theory hits the brick wall of trying to insinuate itself into a franchise because it doesn't work. And the fans have left because it doesn't work. They're not going to explore the sequel trilogy characters anymore because they didn't work. Because they're poorly written, they're not individuals, no one cares about them. Okay? Because they're cultural Marxist avatars, from Rey, the feminazi avatar, to Kyle Ron, the psychotic emo douchebag Creepy white patriarchy, and Kyle Ron, Avatar. Ray, Kathleen Kennedy's landed gentry British avatar, right? Cultural Marxist stereotypes. And if you deviate from that in any way, shape, or form, they will come after you. And this is where Star Wars of George Lucas and Star Wars of the Kennedy era does not mix. Because individual effort and the longing to help make the world better is based on the individual, not this collective bullshit. You can't remake humanity. I mean, look at Stalin. He wasn't selfish, was he? Said no one ever. Look at Mao. He wasn't selfish, was he? Said no one ever. Look at Hitler. He wasn't selfish, was he? Said no one ever. All socialists of a different flavor. This is Steph signing out. See you around the galaxy.